I like Ian's Good Friday experiment, so I'll start with that. This the artificial serotonin drug, as you called it, was
psilocybin.
psilocybin. Okay. Yeah, it definitely confirms what I was saying earlier. It's a higher degree of confidence, higher degree of faith. A higher degree of dogma, if you will, in whatever predispositions that people had. And of course, a higher degree of certainty in whatever it is that you believe is essentially confidence, and confidence is more or less contributed to happiness. So moving on, second point, he was talking about the serotonin-less mice, mice that this gene to produce serotonin was taken out. And these mice showed what, again, I think confirms what I was saying earlier, no continuity of cognitive preferences. No, they didn't. They had a very, very, very high degree of neuroplasticity, which is not inherently a good thing. Like if the mice are doubting themselves to the degree that it's impossible for them to function, that's a bad thing. But of course, on the opposite side, if someone is so certain of themselves that they are not willing to take in new evidence, if they are not willing to challenge their own predispositions, that is bad, because that could lead them to be wrong. Okay, moving on. So as I said earlier, serotonin he talked about faith contributing to group cohesion. It's really serotonin which is contributing to group cohesion, and serotonin which is contributing to faith. So serotonin contributes to group cohesion because it creates a higher degree of stability within that community. People are not doubting themselves, so there is not, relatively, they're not doubting themselves to the degree that it could cause disagreement within the group. I mean, if they come together on some shared interest to begin with, that's more likely to remain consistent if there is a higher degree of general serotonin within that group. Okay, onto the psychometrics in referencing how paranoia affects survival. He references how anxiety level is not correlated with faith. And I am not going to dispute that. My point here is that a known agency, or rather a named agency, something which is assumed to exist, is going to cause you a lower degree of anxiety because it projects this sort of cognitive certainty of what's going on, a sort of confidence again. And so it's a lower degree of anxiety than an unknown agent or an unknown thing. I mean, it is that hyperactive agency detection which causes the paranoia, but it is the predisposition to make it an agent which and define the agent which reduces that anxiety, and that reduction of anxiety that does have those measurable positive effects. And back, of course, before the cause of drought, the cause of rain, and the cause of flooding, all of course being the same general cause, that cause was attributed to rain gods, and that decreased social anxiety because it gave an outlet for people to believe in something, again, a known agent. Next point, social welfare, non-believers, secular explanations, and how that affects their welfare. My point there, or rather what Ian was saying was that his evidence demonstrates that non-believers have a lower degree of social welfare. When he was responding to my point that general social welfare can be increased by those who are skeptical about current methods. Those who are skeptical about current methods are going to be those who are more likely to doubt tradition. And those who doubt tradition are the ones who are going to suggest alternatives which cause the progression of society. So it's not increasing the social welfare of that person with a higher degree of neuroplasticity. It's not increasing the social welfare of those who doubt. It's increasing the social welfare of those around them. So it definitely has a high degree of spillover effect, and it's again, social welfare for others, not for the person. Next, criticism of dogma is criticism of confidence. This is almost tautologically true. Dogma is confidence. Dogma is a predispositional faith in something. It's a belief that something is true without evidence, or in the face of evidence, denying the evidence and just assuming it to be true. So, confidence being associated with serotonin levels, dogma being associated with serotonin.
So you talk for 7 minutes, just so you know.
Okay.
I want to revisit something I talked about a bit last debate, which was William James's will to believe doctrine, which is an argument for theism. Obviously, I like it quite a bit. Essentially, what he said is that sometimes access to the evidence for whether or not certain things are true depends first on accepting that belief without precondition. So an example he gave of this is it can be rational to have otherwise unsupported confidence in your ability to perform a task that requires confidence. So I would say this underpins the importance of exactly the confidence we're talking about here. And I think it's interesting that Andrew and I have quite a bit of overlap on our interpretation of the Good Friday experiment, and I think what this indicates is I think we're both very interested in truth value, and I would certainly never say that finding a truth can be unethical. I think you should just always search for the thing that is the most true. But underlying my interest in truth value is the question, what should we actually do that benefits us the most? So I tend to approach things through sort of a personally pragmatic paradigm. And at the end of the day, I agree with what William James said. So given that there is suffering, for example, what can we do to alleviate that suffering and cope with it the best? And I think that's what leads a lot of rational people to theistic belief. I liked that when we were discussing the mice experiment, Andrew said self-doubt was not an absolute. So essentially he said that these mice were so self-doubting that it was bad. So I think obviously that begs the question of where is the appropriate amount of self-doubt and confidence. I would say confidence is not an absolute. Because I would certainly concede that people who self-doubt more are more likely to be innovators. But specifically, the mechanism that increased the self-doubt of these mice so much that Andrew agrees that it was bad, what it did was lower their serotonin levels. And obviously, we've agreed faith is something that increases serotonin levels. Mm-hmm. So I would say...
Serotonin increases faith.
Oh, well, people that get more faith, their serotonin levels go up. It's not all heritable. There's an environmental component.
Right.
So serotonin, I talked a little bit about earlier. People use sort of in evolutionary psychology a carrot and stick analogy. When evolution, I know I'm ascribing a will to evolution here. Obviously, I don't mean this literally. When evolution wants to punish you for doing something that's evolutionarily bad, it lowers your serotonin level. And when it wants to reward you for doing something evolutionarily good, it increases your dopamine level. So those are mechanisms used by the evolutionary process to steer your brain in a certain direction. Faith is something with evolutionary utility. When you have more faith, your brain's going to, at worst, reward you by not lowering your serotonin levels. So this goes back to the point I was making about the mice. Andrew said that serotonin increases group cohesion, and I would agree. But I do want to emphasize that the structure created by religion itself will facilitate group cohesion. So when there are shamans, for example, the structure whereby people get involved in the religious process provides opportunities for social advancement in and of itself. And it also, of course, confers the mental benefits of things like serotonin. So Andrew talked a bit about hyperactive agency detection and anxiety. And I would say that where there's the most immediate impact evolutionarily from hyperactive agency detection, it relates to survival. So, it's most prudent to assume that if there's a rustle in the bush, someone is going to jump out of the bush and kill you. So obviously, it can give you a degree of comfort to assume, that are gods creating the rain and other natural processes. But where it matters the most, that comes down to the rustle in the bush. It's a person coming to kill you. So accepting that, I would say that a person who is very paranoid, very anxious, would have evolutionarily excellent hyperactive agency detection. If you always are assuming that any little thing is going to jump out and get you, you're going to have probably more hyperactive agency detection than the per capita religious person. So I would again underscore that we can't attribute at least as much as Dawkins does to hyperactive agency detection in religiosity. I don't know how much Andrew attributes.
5 minutes.
So I just want to end with the C.S. Lewis quote I never got around to using. This kind of underscores the whole argument I've just been making. C.S. Lewis said, "I believe in Christianity as I believe the sun has risen, not simply because I see it, but because by it I see everything else." And thank